everyone, Jackie at Spare Room Studio, and today I have a little bit of a different video for you. Normally I'm showing you the starting of a page. Today I'm going to show you the finishing of a page. I have actually made some short reels of doing this part of the page on camera, so that's on Instagram if you'd like to go over there and have a look at Instagram. What I have been using today has been the Sakura Koi watercolours. This is called the Pocket Filled Sketch Box, and it has 24 half pans in there with a refillable water brush. This is the set that I'm using. Now on the back of the packet there is a colour list with the colours and the numbers and names. The pans themselves have got the numbers printed underneath them, so if you're interested in that sort of thing, you can do your swatch. To me personally, I don't tend to worry about that too much, as you know. Now I'm going to put down a piece of paper towel on this side so that I don't dirty this side of the page too much. But what I've been doing is I've actually been using a technique that is very similar to what I do with watercolour pencils and Derwent Inktense. And it was suggested to me by one of my subscribers on YouTube called Waymire. I don't know your name, I'm sorry Waymire, and you may not want people to know your real name. But you suggested that I lift the colour off of the watercolour pans like I do with watercolour pencils or Derwent Inktense pencils and colour with them that way, and it's been working fantastically well. So I thought I'd show you how I would plan to finish a page, because most often than not I generally do the backgrounds last. Got a little bit of a mark there. So I'll show you what I'm going to do. First off, I need to do the flowers here, and I'm going to do them like a pale yellow, I think. So, well, it's not really pale, it's more like a lemon yellow. And what I've been doing is I've been doing a combination of wetting the paper first, or just lifting the colour off the palette, or the pan I should say. I'm not quite sure the terminology of using that, but I've been lifting the colour off with the damp water brush, just lifting the colour off and painting onto the paper, either dry or wetting the paper first. And then I've been mixing a few colours up here in the little palette that you get with the set. So I've been mixing a little bit of colours as well, pardon me. And I've just been experimenting, and I did record it, however I wasn't really happy with the commentary that I did with that, so I decided to turn it into reels for Instagram and just finish this page off for you here now. As I mentioned at the start, generally I do the other way around. I start pages but sometimes don't finish them. This time we're going to finish it on camera. And if you want to head over to Instagram and just have a look at those little reels, I'm not sure if I can actually put them here on YouTube or not. I'll look into that, but it was just showing how I would do approach doing the hair. And so I'm put a little bit more of that into the eyes. Might be a little bit too much. So what I've been doing is, if I've been putting too much colour on, I'm just lifting it off. Just lifting it off and dabbing my brush onto a piece of paper towel and doing it that way, because I was trying to preserve the white of the paper without using white. I want to keep this all just watercolour, and I'm going to use some metallics on some of these bells and different elements just to finish that off. So for the background, what I'm thinking of doing is kind of the reverse of the rainbow. So I've got the purple down here and the red up there. I'm thinking about putting purple behind her there and red down in this corner. So hopefully it's going to turn out okay. Just put my sleeve up because I have a habit of putting my sleeve into wet paint. So it makes sense to start up the top here, further away from where I'm going to work. And the colour that I'm going to use for the purple, or I have been using, is the 147, which is Ultramarine Deep. And I've been mixing a little bit of the Purple Violet in with it. And so I'm going to use that. And I'm going to do like just a very abstract wash style background, which I've got to be careful not to go too close to these leaves now that I've painted the leaves in. And just for a bit of vibrant colour, if I pick up that pigment off of the palette or off of the pan with the damp brush and then just drop it into the wet paper areas, you can see how that colour bleeds out. Now with water, pardon me, my voice keeps going today. With watercolour, what I like about watercolour is the looseness of it. So that means that going close to these leaves and plants here, but not too close because they're wet, means that I'm leaving a little bit of a white halo around the leaves and so on. And I personally quite like that look. It's not for everybody, but I like the fact that with watercolour you don't have to be really precise all the time. And what I've chosen to do is be a little bit more careful in her face and make sure that her face is a little bit more carefully blended and so on. No harsh lines and no block colouring in her face. But the background here can be as loose and as washy as, you know, I want to make it, because it creates a nice counterbalance. Just excuse me a moment. What are you doing, Hamish? Hey, come over here. So Hamish is in here with me. I'm having to keep an eye on him because he's been a little bit naughty in the house with some toileting accidents recently, so I have to keep an eye on him. So I've got one eye on my painting and one eye on what he's doing. And what I'm thinking I'd like to do here is actually bring in some of these other colours of the rainbow hair and bring them in here as well. But it's kind of a reverse of what's going on with her hair, with it darker down here, lighter up there. I want to do the reverse look of that a little bit. And so I'm just mixing some of those colours onto the palette here. Otherwise I'm just picking them up off of the pan, the pigment off of the pan, and actually just painting onto the page with it. Very much like what you've seen me do with lifting it off of the pencils. It's the same concept, but I'm just lifting it off of there instead. I just want to make sure that I stay in camera here. So make a little bit of room. And I want my brush to be clean here. It's a bit dirty still. I want it to be clean so that I can start dropping in some red. I've got a bit of green there that I've got in the wrong place, but that will work because I think what we can do is just bring some green down into here. And I'll bring in some yellow. And I'm going to go off the page there, I think. Blend that in. And because we've got the yellow there, I might let that run down into the green. I did want red down here, but yeah, that might still work, or the orange will work there, but I've got the green now. Now if I use blue, it's going to run down into that yellow and become green anyway. So this is the first time in this whole page that I've actually used a lot of water on the page. I've used very little at all so far up here. Very little at all. What I have been doing is a combination of the wetting the page first and putting the colour in, and also using a wet brush with the colour on to paint onto the dry paper. So it's been a bit of an experimental page. As I say, it was the suggestion of Waymire on YouTube here that comments regularly with some really handy art tips for people. It was their suggestion to try working with it this way instead of making very wet washes that were taking forever to dry. It was their suggestion that I work this way and see how I found it. So I'm just going to let that all blend into the yellow and the green there. We're just going to get another sort of green. And because the hair is blue there, we don't really want it terribly blue behind there because it's just going to get lost. So I might just actually bring a bit of green in there as well. Now this page is called Melody. I chose this particular page because I wanted to do the hashtag for rainbow hair for Nirma's colouring on Instagram. And this just seemed like an ideal page to have a go at that theme. And I'm actually thinking that I'm going to leave this section here without the background, and the same with that section there. I just sort of want it behind her. So I'm going to have to let that dry now. That is really the first time that I have saturated things to that extent. And we'll just bring in a little bit of orange down here just to tie in with that rainbow theme. But I don't want the orange to mix with the green too much because that will just end up going murky and I'll end up with muddy colours. And so far I've managed to keep it very light and airy, which is what I wanted to do. I wanted to use the watercolour as it's best known for. and that is for being light and airy, not heavy and opaque. If I want heavy and opaque, then I may as well just be using coloured pencil or acrylic paint or a marker or something. There's really no point using the watercolours if you're not going to actually embrace what watercolour is about. Well, this is my thinking anyway. It can be used very heavy and opaque, but personally I think watercolour comes alive when you let there be variation in the tones, when you let the white of the paper shine through, when you keep the colours clean and fresh, and you let the light into it. To me, that's what watercolour is about. And so if I want heavy, opaque, saturated, vibrant colour that is really solid, then it makes sense to use a marker or a acrylic paint or a coloured pencil or something that by its very nature is that way. And it's sort of seems counterintuitive to me to use a product like watercolour in that way when it's designed to give you these beautiful, light, fresh, airy colours. Then that's what I'm going to use it for. I hope that makes sense. So that's probably about as much as I need to do with the watercolour there. I may need to come back up here and put, strengthen a bit of colour up eventually. But that's really what I plan to do there. I'm going to bring in the Jelly Roll Metallics, if I can remember where I put them. There's the Jelly Roll Metallics. Now, I don't normally think about using metallics with watercolour, but she's got this jewellery and bells and things, and I'm thinking gold. And I just feel like that little bit of metallic gold is going to really be ideal. I could try to mimic gold by painting it, but I don't think it would work that great. I'm not that proficient at doing that, so I'm just going to introduce this little bit of metallic jelly roll. Now, this is going to be very tricky. I don't want to put my hand in wet paint, so I'm just going to go over that carefully that way. And that's all that's going to need, I think. And I might use a little bit. This one is a black metallic, and I'm just going to use that on here on the harp. So that will be enough there. Oh, and I forgot that there are bells up there as well. Now, just excuse me while I work over the top here. Just carefully trying not to touch into wet areas of paint. I'll just put a little bit on there. Now, as I mentioned, I don't want to bring in any pencil into this at all. I wanted to leave it purely as a watercolour painting. However, there are some details in the eyes there that I'd like to bring back in at the end, and I may not do that on camera, but if I do, I'm going to use the Sakura Pigma Micron pens for that. I'm wondering whether I should put some colour in there behind that the harp strings. Not 100% sure how to go about that, but what I generally do when I'm not feeling that sure is I'll do it a very light wash of colour. So behind here, because we've got purple, we've got the purple up there. This is sort of a gold. I think we might bring in the Crimson Lake. Just a little bit of that behind there. I might also put a little tiny bit of that purple violet back into there. That's much too vibrant, so what I'm going to do is just lift the excess off with the clean brush, and by using the clean brush with a bit of water in, I'm diluting it each time. And then I might lower down here go for more of the let's have a look, what's this one? Jaune. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that. Brilliant. I've seen the colour in some other pencil sets before, and I don't know how to pronounce that word. Jaune. Okay, so this is drying down here. It's still quite wet up there. We might just try and mix a little bit of a paler wash of the Crimson Lake just to strengthen up some of this on her cheek. Now what I've done with the skin is I've brought in a lot of colours here that you don't associate with any person's skin tone. But what I've done is brought in all the colours that are in around her as if they're reflecting on her skin. And I'm thinking that, to me, she looks like some sort of ethereal being that's not quite human, you know, like a fairy or something like that, as a lot of the characters in Christine's book, you know, this book, Wildflower Folk, are fairies and what have you. Although she doesn't have wings, she has that quality about her that looks like she might be some sort of angel or otherworldly creature. And I was thinking, you know, pale skin so that I can have all these different colours reflected on there. So she's not meant to be necessarily like a real person. And I'm just using the damp brush and picking up the slightest bit of colour off of the palette there, and that's what I'm going to use to just bring in a little bit of extra colour. Christine has done quite a bit of grayscale in places to guide you as to where highlights and shadows and so on should be. And so I'm following her lead. The beauty of watercolour is that if you keep your colours light and airy enough, translucent enough, that grayscale shows through and does the work of shadows for you anyway. As long as you don't go sort of too heavy, they will show through. They will influence what the colour looks like a little bit, the grayscale. But if you've got the book, have a play with it and see how you best work at incorporating that grayscale. Because if this was a sketchbook drawing that, you know, we had Christine Karron's wonderful skill and we were drawing in a sketchbook and we were watercolouring over the top of it, quite often your pencil strokes will show under a watercolour anyway. You don't obliterate everything that's underneath when you're using watercolour, so it's nice to leave some of that, and it does really look like a sketchbook painting. Well, I think it does anyway. So just putting a little bit of extra colour in here and there just to emphasise some of the details of Christine's drawing without getting too heavy, hopefully. Now, problem I used to have working with watercolours is that I quite often used to overlay or mix too many colours and it ends up going really muddy. So you have to keep quite a light touch when you're working with watercolour if you want to keep your colours nice and fresh. And the term I think of when I think of watercolour is clean. You want clean colours that are not muddied. So there you go, that's pretty much how I was planning to finish the page. It's still very wet for me there to get in with a fine liner pen, and I'm going to have a really, really light touch with that, because if I go in too heavy, it's going to lose all that freshness about it. So I could even try, there's a Payne's Grey here, 231 is a Payne's Grey. I could try to be very, very careful with the tip of my water brush and just darken up some of those areas there. But it needs a very steady hand to do that with a brush. And it's really easy to overdo it. So Christine has given you some really good lines and hatching and so on to suggest where shading, lights, highlights, etc. should be in your work. So I'm at danger of making that really awkward there, so I'm just going to stop with that brush, and I may just use a very, very fine Pigma Micron pen just to tighten up some of those details. So I'm going to end that there. lift that up to show you. At this stage the colours are very clean and bright and fresh. You can just see how wet that paper is there by the shine that's still on it. And so I will need to put a little bit of black on the eye of the bird. Also just tighten up some of those areas on the girl's eyes. But that's pretty much how the page is going to end up, I think. There won't be an awful lot more done to that. So I hope you've enjoyed that little bit of a look at how to finish the page, how I would complete the page. And if you've got any questions, please pop them in the comments box. And I'm hoping to do a little bit more of this sort of watercolour using the paint box like this. So let me know if you're interested in seeing some of that. I've got to get back to doing some crayon experimenting too, but this one's going to be for the hashtag Rainbow Hair for Nirma. That's Nirma Colouring on Instagram. And a big thank you again to Sakura Australia for sending me a box of supplies to try as Sakura Star of the Month, which I am over on Instagram at the moment for August 2024. So go visit Sakura Australia on Instagram if you're interested. But this is the box, the packaging that the set came in. There's the colours listed on the back with the numbers, and that's the little travel sketch box, and it closes up. So your palette goes on there. I won't do it at the moment because it's got wet paint on it still. And it closes up, and that's a nice handy little travel box. It has a ring on the back that you can sit your finger through so that you can relax your hand while you're holding it if you're painting out somewhere on location. I don't do that anymore. I used to. I did it for a while when I was taking classes, and it's very, very handy. But I like the fact that given that I don't have a lot of space at the moment, this isn't a huge box to store anywhere, and using them in that manner gave me very little to clean up. So that's a huge win for me, and I'm really, really pleased to be trialling these paints. So let me know what you think. I've quite enjoyed this one. It's been very relaxing, and I think I might have to get back into watercolours a little bit more. So thank you for being with me, and really appreciate it, and I'll see you again really soon. Bye now.